Good afternoon to all of you. You are welcome to this week's community show. This show is convened by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. On this show, we focus on issues that pertain our communities, the people at the grassroots, the people who face the daily realities of life in Uganda. And today's topic is one at the center of every community member, and that is the social development of Uganda. As many of you are aware, and for those who do not know, Uganda is in October celebrating 60 years of independence. Uganda, like many other countries, was a British protectorate. It was, in other words, colonized by the British, and she gained her independence in 1962. After that, Uganda has gone through a series of events, political, social, economic. For 60 years, Uganda has endured. It has won. It has also failed in many instances. And on the economic front, Uganda has had tremendous growth and tremendous development. Uganda's population has also increased to about 44 million Ugandans today. The question is, have the lives of Ugandans also transformed? Have the lives improved? Has the economic situation improved? And if so, or if not, how about the development, the social development of Uganda's people? Today, I am joined by, again, distinguished people to help us analyze the social development of Uganda 60 years down the road. We have Flavia Piloya, who is a youth leader from Gulu city. We also have Francis Happy, and we have Rugaju. These are all leaders in communities and understand the issues that surround the communities and pertain to the lives of the communities. I would ask the members to introduce themselves, and then we shall dig deep into this conversation. I'll begin with you, Rugaju, and then have Happy and Flavia consequently.
My name is Rugaju, Deputy RDC Kanungu. I'm right now in Kanungu and in the hills. The terrain is not good. It keeps on the best. I'm actually link up and hear from one another. I'm happy to be part of the panel, and I'm glad to be with you guys today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Flavia?
Nonetheless, my name is Flavia Piloya. I am the Secretary for Students Affairs, Gulu City Youth Council. I stand in as the Emeritus Vice Guild President of Gulu University, an activist, a youth leader, a teacher, etc., etc. And I'm so happy to be part of this panel, and I look forward to fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to kick off our discussion. Like I earlier said, Uganda's population is about 44 to 45 million, as estimates show. The last census, we are around 35 million Ugandans, and it has been almost 10 years after that, and the population has steadily increased. 76% of Uganda's population lives in rural areas, and over 70 still employed in the agricultural sector. The poverty line of many Ugandans, unfortunately, the poverty line of Uganda is still low. It's still very, very, I should say low or high, but the numbers are big. About 21% of Ugandans live below the poverty line, and over 50% live less on not more than $2 a day. For context, a dollar is about 3,600 shillings. Of course, the rate keeps changing, and $2 maximum is about 8,000 Uganda shillings. Now, for someone to say that people survive on less than $1 a day, and that is usually families, that's a bit unfortunate. So you can now get the context. And about 33% of Ugandans own bank accounts, so many people are still in the informal kind of arrangements and in the informal sector. School dropout rate is high. About only 50% of the people who begin primary school, only about slightly above 50% finish, and slightly less people even finish secondary school education. So having said that, for our conversationists, I want to begin with you, Gad. What is your assessment of Uganda's social standing? How is Uganda standing when it comes to social development?
Minus what we have been going through the after COVID effect, Uganda has been on a track. And I think just like any other growing country, we have been trying to survive, and people were really growing their incomes. Only that since 2019 up to date, when we were hit by COVID, that's when our incomes went down, and the standard of living was all affected. And it's estimated we might go for another 5 to 10 years, which we'll be calling the after COVID effect, in that most of the people are still feeling the impact of what we went through. But we have been on track if it was not because of that. And I believe this has affected all countries. And even when we are saying all that, both for the developed and the developing countries, most people have been not working, yet they have been eating, they have been spending. Most factories had stopped, and very many owners and factory owners have died, and meaning that when the vision bearer is not there, it definitely affects the incomes, and many people who have been earning from that. As we well know, most people who are employed in Uganda are not employed sector. The sector was affected a lot, so it is going to take us some time in order for us as a country to recover from the past experience of the COVID effect. Then that's how we are seeing the country trying to see how can we revive the economy from what we have gone through. We right away from COVID, we began with what we call the myuga, and it was targeting also the low-income earners, especially those who are living on subsistence and subsistence farming, or those who are traders, like the mechanics, welding, and whichever. those who whose income is what they can consume. And it simply means the biggest percentage of Ugandans live on subsistence. So meaning that during that time, very many people died, and majorly they didn't die because of even COVID. Most of them died of hunger. Like even now, we still have those effects in Uganda. So after the Emyoga, now that's when we came to parish development model. The country is trying to do all it can to revive the economy and also to ensure that the people get on track. Other than that, we are doing very badly. Even some of the statistics, I don't think from 2019 up to date there is any study that has been done to know how the status of the people is. The U-boss, I think this next year, that's when we can know how many we are, what is the population of Uganda. People are still talking of 45 million, but I still believe that is underestimated because that study was done a long time ago. It is until next year that we can know how many people are the standard of living in Uganda. And that is not social research. It must be scientific research based. It has to be based on scientific research, and it is the scientific research that will show us the household incomes and how we are doing. So we are all eager and waiting for next year to see so that we can estimate how the Ugandans are living. We living below $1 or above $1. And how we look at that, we look at per capita income versus the population will be having. And that's when we can be able to tell the standard of living of Ugandans. Thank you. That's my submission.
Thank you very much. To help us, before I get back to you, Flavia, to help us appreciate the social development theory or parameter, the World Bank has defined social development to reflect focus on addressing long-lasting barriers to development, strengthening the focus on people who have been excluded from economic and social opportunities, and increasing investment in inclusive growth. And other authors have defined social development to be generally ensuring, generally at that point where people live in human dignity. Okay, people can be able to get water, clean water. It can be able to access food and a balanced meal, to say good food. People are able to access social amenities such as electricity, education, healthcare. So we are further going to assess that. God says that God blames a lot on the COVID pandemic that slowed us down or things like that. But even before the pandemic, Uganda was growing at about an average of 4.5, percent. It even slowed down at some point to 3.7. Luckily, now the economists are telling us that we're averaging about 5% growth. The government, I know, has increased it to about 6% growth rate. But anyway, not to get into the numbers so much, because we need to speak the language that is really, really relatable to the people in the community. So Flavia, you've heard what God says. God has blamed so much on so much of what is happening, the big numbers under the poverty line, etc., and the pandemic. But he has also highlighted what the government is trying to do to alleviate, the challenges. Give us your experience or your assessment of our social development as a country. Where do we stand in your view? What are the things in the communities where you are that point to maybe better social development or less social development, all are blend?
Thank you, moderator. Once again, my name is Flavia Piloya, and I come from Gulu. That is the northern part of this country. And in our discussion tonight, we have Uganda social development after the 6 years of independence. I would want to appreciate what God said, because this is reality. What COVID hit us with is a living testimony. And the other thing I would want to say is, as much as we have negativities or the negatives on the side of, as we try to assess our social development, I would also want to appreciate the fact that we have the other side of the positives that clearly point out the developments of Uganda as a country itself. Though I would also want to bring it to the attention of the House that much as we have other regions doing so badly, there are others that are extremely soaring in this very state before and even after the COVID. In my discussions, I'll be looking at the social services and the deliveries, the digital elevation, or the fourth industrial revolution as Uganda, where it stands. And I would also want to speak about the unity in the country. Just from the definition of the moderator about social development, this is where I stem my discussions from, that social development basically refers to strategies planned or interventions to improve the capacity of the existing social systems to cope with demands of change and growth. And I would also want to bring to the attention of the House that the social services I'm going to speak about consists of facilities, that is public education, welfare, infrastructures, healthcare facilities, amongst others. And also, just like the previous speaker said, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted the social and economic structures, especially the local government systems of service delivery, with significant consequences on health, livelihoods, general economic developments at large. But also I would want to bring to the attention of the House before I go into my discussions that the state bears the legal responsibility to ensure that fundamental human rights, the fundamental human rights to security, education, healthcare, are realized, and expanding inclusive service delivery is critical to achieving the MDGs, that is the Millennium Development Goals. So I'll be speaking about the state of education as the social service in this country. One thing I would want to appreciate is the government interventions of putting on board or bringing on board the UPEs and the USEs in the country, which has to a very big extent seen to it that at least 4 out of every 10 Ugandans access education, be it in the villages or in the urban setting. But as we are faced with the reality that close to 76% of this country's population reside in the rural settings, I would want to appreciate the interventions of UPE and USEs, that yes, at least in every community you go to, there is one seed school, there is a primary school, which is put up in place to enable the people of that area access education. And of course, it's not compared to the urban setup where people are attaining education in very good structured and the schools. So on education, as a citizen of this country, I would want to really appreciate the fact that yes, as a fast growing country, we are at least somewhere, because apparently we have very many elites, and this is a result of the education facilities that we have across the country. And then where I come from before the pandemic and even after the pandemic, on the issues of healthcare, it hasn't been to maximum. I would rate it at a fairly, I would say, average, because we do not have access to good health facilities. That is, if I speak of the rural settings, yes, we do not have the access to these very good facilities. We have recorded very, very high death rates, especially when the young mothers are giving birth, and also in instances of very, very serious medical complications. One thing I've realized is that in the urban areas, there is very good access to healthcare, health facilities, but down there in the villages, it's not as compared to the urban setups. This is simply because sometimes, yes, we want to believe that the biggest population of this country, close to 76%, yes, stems up from the rural settings. But I would want to express on a sad note that there is a lot of negligence. It's especially where I come from, the people from the rural areas have not really been so much considered. They have not been so much considered. It's like, to some extent, the state only focuses their considerations or the nation building in some areas, which I would not want to mention in this case. But when you look at the grassroots people, they tend to normally receive herbal medicines, that is to cure some of their complications, and they do not have access to health education, that if a woman is pregnant, she has to undergo certain assessments from the medical facilities, so that it in turn helps her to give birth safely. There is really no access to health education, and yet it is so vital in this economy. And also, the other thing I would want to speak about is the state of the infrastructure development. When we speak of Uganda as a country, looking at the urban settings, yes, I would want to applaud the state for putting in place, yes, the good road networks, for making our movements easy. But then when you look at the grassroots level, when you look at the masses, they are infested with a lot of feeder roads, and there is very bad road network, which makes it so hard for even the people from the urban setups to reach out to the grassroots people in this case, because there are other areas which are really hard to reach because they are characterized by bad road networks, a poor network, that is the poor phone network, which strains the communication lines in these areas, compared to the urban setups whereby, yes, we have very good communication networks, we have very good road networks. And when looking at some of these factors here, I think there are other places that are rapidly developing at the expense of others, which are highly affected by societal factors that frustrate their development. But also, the other thing I would want to speak about as regards Uganda's social development after the 60 years of independence is the aspect of digital elevation. I would want to bring to the attention of the House that in October 2020, Uganda adopted its own national fourth IR. When I say fourth IR, I mean fourth industrial revolution strategy, whose emphasis stemmed on e-governance, urban management of smart cities, healthcare, education, agriculture, and digitalization of the economy. Apparently, we are on Zoom, and that is an aspect of the digital elevation that I'm speaking about. And to bring to the attention of the House, the fourth industrial revolution is basically a rapid change to technology, industries, societal patterns, and processes in this 21st century due to the increasing interconnectivity and the smart automation. I would also want to bring to the attention of the House that despite the negatives that Uganda faces as a country, as also an infant democracy that is rapidly growing with a population of about 44 million people, constituted by about 68% of the young people. Yes, Uganda is really growing, and I would want to say it's growing at an average rate. And when we are to look at the aspects of digital elevation, when we speak of the e-governance, this is basically to establish transparencies, accountabilities in the government processes. We have seen in the previous election, there's been the election was marred with a lot of digitalization, whereby other candidates were progressing their manifestos online. Their agents are trying to progress their manifestos. This is all an aspect of the digital elevation in Uganda social development. And I would want to say that citizens are able to share their views on bills, on policies, or decisions taken by the government. Many a times have seen as citizens of Uganda try to comment about the happenings or the proceedings in parliament, or maybe some of the bills or the policies that are put in place. And this is an aspect of digital elevation, which we cannot speak, which we cannot really leave out. And also information like import, export, registration of companies are available through the internet. I would want to say a lot of things have been modernized just because of the digital elevation. We have seen online sales, we have seen people doing trading online. That is an aspect of e-commerce. And we cannot speak about Uganda's social development leaving out these factors. Apparently, we are having our passports being registered online. I think this is something we should snap our fingers to as a fast-growing country, because we are leaving the manual world. We are entering the digital world or the e-world, and we have had a series of agro machineries being introduced, even down to the grassroots levels. It's no longer the question of you wake up and go to the garden and dig a whole 20 acres of land just by your hands, but we have seen tractors take phase. We have seen maize mills being put up in some places. We have seen oil processing plants that we would also want the government at least to reach out to these rural areas and put up some of these processing plants to increase the social development by curbing the issues of unemployment. That is by bringing in the development to the rural communities, so that at least the people of the country can work and pay their taxes in peace. And also the other thing I would want to...
I don't want you to exhaust your points though. We still have quite some time.
And I think lastly, what I would want to say is we are seeing heightened security and safety measures being put in place. That is, I would want to say the CCTV cameras, which help us to curb criminals or maybe crimes around our cities. And due to the digital elevation as a factor to social development, we have seen improved architecture designs just by this, and in turn it improves our infrastructure designs like roads and etc. I submit.
Thank you very much for that quite exhaustive analysis of Uganda's social development. You've analyzed quite well. Francis, I want to come to you to give us your assessment of Uganda's social development 60 years down the road. What do you make of our, social development?
Thank you so much, the moderator and the viewers. Indeed, my name is Francis Happy. I come I come from Kasese, the mineral city. And I would like to have a positive appreciation of Uganda's social economic development 60 years down the road. Uganda's social development is guided by the social development sector, which deals with matters related to inequality, exclusion, unemployment, inequity, adult literacy, vulnerability, and non-realization of rights. So this is the sector that guides Uganda's social development, and it basically focuses on addressing issues like access to water and sanitation, health, housing, community empowerment, education, and these other sectors that look at the individual human or the individual person in trying to bring the person or the people to realize or to enjoy their social well-being. And of course, this sector has played quite a big role in ensuring that after independence, the people are able to enjoy and feel like they are Ugandans and feel like they are independent. The sector indeed looks at issues of social protection, and it encompasses initiatives that reduce economic and social vulnerability. Just like my colleague Flavia has put it, I would like to look at the positives. For example, the issue of connection to Uganda's major towns. You look at least every Uganda's major town, district town, is connected to a tarmac road, except for places where I work, like in Musiime, which is not yet connected. But there is also a process that is underway to have it connected. That is a credit. Then the issue of industrialization. We have had local industries by local people. We have had foreign investors coming to Uganda, much as some of the projects end in the air. But there is that kind of progress that we are able to have to manufacture small things within our country, or even add value to some of the small products within the country. We look at issues of security for the nation, and human security or individual security. There is no way one can beat me on issues of security of Uganda, especially the security of the country. We have created security for our own selves after independence, but have also provided security to other countries. Look at Somalia. The stability is because of Uganda. Congo, the Operation Shuja, which is ongoing, and other countries. The cross-border businesses, cross-border trades. We have a very good economic policy that allows cross-border trade, which is booming and which is helping us. I take us to the issue of civic space, where civil society, organizations, NGOs, and all these are able to operate, complement government programs, or even critique some of the government programs. My sister Flavia talked of the EO Digital Uganda. That one, at least even where we are, what we are doing right now, that is an e-Uganda and is a credit. Then the issue of decentralization. There was a time when everyone was calling for a city. And most of the big towns were granted city status. And we will be enjoying these cities sooner or later. We will be enjoying these cities. There's a time when we wanted when politicians were calling for regional towns or regional cities. And this is what is being rolled out. And actually, our viewers and our listeners, at one point, I will even advocate that some of the ministries be decentralized according to the cities. We don't need the whole of Kampala having every ministry, so that you want even to take a passport photo, you go to Kampala. You want to shave good hair, that is at the standard of parliament, you go to Kampala. At some point, we shall have these these big ministries decentralized. So I feel we are moving in the right track, despite some few challenges that we maybe need to handle so as to realize our social economic growth after 60 years. Of course, we can't compare ourselves to those countries where everything is provided. No, we have to ensure our development is a process, and that's when we can realize it. I could look at the plight of the youth. Uganda's economic growth is surviving on youth who make up about 70 or 72% of the total population of Uganda. And these youth are socially interconnected. A good percentage of them are in school. Some have completed school, though they are not well integrated in the planning and budgeting process of the country. So that needs to be worked on, if we must realize, because they make a bigger population, and they should be able to give us the biggest labor in the country. So integrating them in planning and budgeting is very key, and also giving them what to do. We may not accommodate them. All the youth may not be accommodated in the job sector, but we also need to look at issues of work-based learning, skilling the youth, giving them education that can help them do certain things by themselves. That is skilling the youth, which is a program that the government has rolled on, but it has to go to the youth at the local area, at the LOC1. That's what I mean. And that is, let's make this skilling work-based learning, work-based, that someone is able to study something like a course, hands-on course, and they're able to get like a certificate, a small certificate, especially one that comes from the DIT, because DIT certificates, formal and informal certificates, are regionally recognized. You can use that same certificate in another country. The issue of the refugees. I'm happy that Uganda in Africa could be one of the best countries, or the one country that is hosting the biggest number of refugees. And these refugees, if you look at them also, most of them are youth. I work in a humanitarian kind of arrangement, in a refugee arrangement, but most of them are youth. And what the national youth cry for is what the refugee youth are also crying for. For instance, there is reduced food ratio by 40%, meaning they are surviving, the refugees are surviving at 60% in terms of food, which is given by the UN agencies. So the alternative, or in filling in the gap of the 40%, they need to go agriculture. Government has to secure for them fields for cultivation. But now, are we just going into agriculture? We need to adopt this mechanized agriculture. For those who are the urban refugees, should be rolled into this small-scale urban farming as we try to develop. And I would like to integrate this, or to intertwine this with the hunger in the country. Look at now what is in Karamoja in the 20th century. Imagine, we have people dying of hunger and all this. Government should step up. We don't need to keep relief food and give it when there is hunger. We need to prevent hunger before people hungry. So in social development, the issue of social protection is very key. And one of the instances you were sure there is social protection is making sure people have access to food. So as we tread the 60 years, the issue of hunger should really be worked upon, and it should not come anywhere in these 60 years. And the issue of climate change. Climate change is one key issue that government has to look at critically. We saw floods recently in Bududa. At the start of the rains, there are floods and people have died in big numbers. And the same, what is, if people in Bududa have gone through that, what is the message to people in other areas, people in the Kigezi area, people in Kasese? When there are floods in Kasese, it is all floods. When the sun hits Kasese, it's all hitting Kasese. So what is the message that we are giving to these people? What is the response? What is the preparedness of the people themselves with their local leaders and the government at 60 years? There are certain things that cannot be repeated and repeated. Today we are, this season of September, we are handling climate change. Then again, next year in September, climate, we must have interventions that are long lasting. Yeah, over to you for now.
Oh, thank you very much. I want to now bring God. Well, it's interesting that everyone that has presented has been giving a general, outlook, and it's quite balanced to see that there is a blend, and people have really said that some good things have been done, others are lacking, and I think that is quite fair. But we may not have social development, and some people have really talked about governance in a way. We can't talk about social development exclusively from governance, from civic competence of people, from respect for human rights, the rule of law. It would make us that proverbial ostrich that buries its head in the sand, thinking that everything it is safe, yet the rest of the body is actually exposed. And this, it goes to you, God. Is it possible for Uganda to advance when it comes to social development while neglecting other core issues such as human rights, governance, which clearly, let's state the facts, Uganda is doing badly when it comes to those issues. We have a leader who has stayed in power for so long. We still have people who are in prison following the elections that were held in 2021. We're nearing the close of 2022, and people who are arrested. How will such people contribute to the economy? How will such people become better when they're still facing violations? We still have serious restrictions when it comes to the freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and these are core to the development of a country. If a country is to develop, the citizens have to be allowed to express how they want to be governed, to express their opinions on many issues. Unfortunately, the network is disturbing. But if there are many things that are supposed to go forward socially, governance and human rights are not supposed to be excluded. So I would invite someone to, Flavia, as God gets back, is it possible to have development that is excluded from those issues that I've mentioned? This was a question to God, but you could comment on that also.
Thank you so much, moderator. On that very question, this is how I would respond. In all fairness, you can only assess the progress or the development of a state basing on the plight of the people or the citizens. You cannot assess the development of a state without mentioning the citizens or the people living in that specific country. I want to attest to the fact that we are still faced with a repression on our rights. That is when it comes to the freedom of speech. When I, as a young person, wants to express my views wholly on a certain matter regarding the state, you find that my rights are repealed somewhere. I am being looked for. I'm being threatened for the things I'm trying to express my views on. And it would totally be impossible for a state to develop when the state puts the fundamental human rights at the back spot. One thing I would want to say is, for Uganda as an infant democracy, if we are to realize the change that we preach, if we are to realize the development that we want to see happen, just like in other countries, the people of this country should be put at the forefront. Let us not look at the economic factors. Let us not look at the political aspects of it, but let us look at the sociology aspect, the social aspect of this country, which stems from the citizens. And just like the previous speaker said, Uganda is a country with over 68% of its total population stemming from the youth. Let us kill our youth. Let us give them the chances to have this work-based learning, just like he said, the hands-on certificates. Let us include the youth, who constitute the biggest population, in our budgeting processes. Not only that, let us include our youth in platforms that enable them comment on the decisions that this country takes as a state. Let us also adopt the mechanized agriculture, yes? And in so doing, this country will realize the change or the development it really seeks to see. But at the expense of the fundamental human rights, putting the citizens at the back spot and only looking at a few aspects of this country, Uganda will not go far. So for us to go where we want to be, we have to put the citizens, we have to put the human rights, we have to put the rule of law at the forefront, and only that will be done. If that is only done, then we shall see our country go to where it wants to be. Over to you, Mr. Moderator.
Yes, thank you very much, Flavia. God, this question, was originally yours. Many people feel excluded in this country. How shall we be able to socially develop when many people feel they are not represented, they're not part of this country because of how they've been treated, because of the governance, because of Uganda's record on human rights? How is it going to be possible that we progress forward after 60 years and then we go forward and ensure social development when alternative views are not listened to? Perhaps these alternative views could even be more development oriented and you know, yeah, these alternatives could be quite worth their salt, you know. Yeah, God, go ahead, please.
I'm saying that in a view of what my fellow panelist Flavia has been sharing, I think there is a mindset change. There should be advocacy for mindset change. And when someone says that there is no rule of law, there is no human rights in Uganda, I really get so surprised, and I wonder which Uganda someone is viewing it. However, when we come to mindset change kind of ideology, we look at maybe there is how someone is viewing Uganda, the way not how others are viewing it. Because when you see the nation, how it is moving, where the nation is coming from, where the nation is and where the nation is going, I really disagree with someone who says there is no rule of law and there is no human right respect in Uganda. I 100% disagree with that person, unless if that person doesn't know where we are coming from and what we have gone through and what we are going through. Uganda, under the government of NRM, has been emphasizing the pillars, the 5 pillars, which is patriotism, Pan-Africanism, democracy, and social transformation. This is basically what we've been on, trying to make Uganda feel that this is the Uganda we want and we must participate in building it to the status we want it to be. We are looking at Pan-Africanism, where we are here, we are in Somalia trying to restore the peace, and we are in Congo, we are in Southern Sudan, we are everywhere trying to say, can we be one Africa? Can we create one spirit of Africa? We are looking at democracy. It is under the NRM governance that we have restored this, and everyone is free to start. Only that many people misuse this. For example, under democracy, people think one, there is freedom of speech, but also there is when someone says there is freedom of speech, you must also put into action what you speak. It's not a matter of speaking, because what you speak for, you will give accountability for.
Francis, you have something to say?
Yeah, interestingly, God is coming up with something very good, much as we've lost him. The rule of law in Uganda, yes, we don't only have to get to weigh or to look at it from where we've come from. Where we've come from there. But we also need to consider where we are and where we are going. The issue of where we came from, we cannot come from that or dwell on that for all the 60 years. No. We also have to look at the 60 years. How are we standing? And where do we want to stand the next day? Colleagues, you've seen a number of things happening. And the international bodies, we look at the democracy, the well-being of the family, using international indices. And the biggest indice they use is the rule of law. Whether you build a lot of industries, you empower women, you give them everything, mama kids and all that. But when their rights, when the social protection of the individual person is not catered for, it all gets out of hand. And I've been talking about this thing. I've been talking about this issue. Now, why do we need to look at just one single thing and then we generalize? We've had instances where, I just give an example. Soroti, about 3 weeks ago, you saw what happened because of a by-election here in Kasese. You find, because there is a by-election, every eye of Uganda is in Kasese because of the by-election, intimidation and all that. And So do we have to go to bring a member for someone to cast the vote? No. Do we have to deploy everywhere in Kampala because so-and-so is passing, going to somewhere? No. So we don't need to, we need actually the rule of law is what will determine the life of the person. We only see these things in public places, but we will only feel them when they have come to the local person. We are still happy that they're happening in cities, in big towns. But when it comes to the local person, that's when we shall realize that there is need for rule of law. I don't water the fact that we are moving in the right direction, but these small happenings are a big check to our democratic process. So we need to step up and we need to credit where it is due and say, no, here it is wrong. And what is wrong in one eye should be wrong in the next eye. Again, over to you and Flavia.
Yes, thank you. God, you come back to this. While you said Francis was giving his contribution, I'm coming to Flavia. I just made a simple search, and Uganda, out of 139 countries ranked by World Justice Project, Uganda ranks 125th when it comes to the respect for the rule of law. That means we are about only 14, countries. There is only actually around 13 countries between Uganda and the worst country when it comes to the respect for the rule of law. In other words, we're like 15 positions away from being a country that totally disregards the rule of law. And it's important to have governance structures because these also attract investment. Many investors, before coming to a country, look at the governance structure. Okay, are there respect for court decisions? Is there respect for employment? What is the state of employment laws? What is indeed in practice? All these things attract investment, and when you have more investment, then that means the standard of life and the lives of people are going to improve. That means more money. So you see how these are very connected. Let us have you, Flavia, and then we shall have Gad as we near the end of this show.
Thank you once again. I see the discussion is already taking a very interesting direction. I am so glad that Gad is back. And also I would want to thank Francis for the submissions he made. Yes, what I wanted to speak about is basically to respond to what Gad said about advocacies for mindset change. One thing I want to bring to the attention of this house is before we even go to look at the ways to bring about mindset change or to advocate for mindset change, is before we even do that, we need to ask these questions: that what is bringing about the mindset that people are having that need to be changed? Because I do not believe this mindset just stems out of nowhere. One thing I want to say is we have all been seeing the characteristics of our elections or state processes, and we have also been seeing how it has other things it has been purely putting to the front. We have seen our elections being marred with a lot of intimidation. We have seen violence. Yes, we have seen it being also marred with a lot of bribery somewhere. And all this makes people lose trust in the state, not because they really want to do so, but you would feel like not participating in a state process or in these activities would actually leave you better if you stayed at home and kept quiet than going out to exercise your rights and end up coming home with an injury. So this is basically what has brought about this kind of mindset change, because it's not just once that we had elections. We've been having a series of elections, yes, and also God, speaking of the core principles of NRM, I don't want to disagree with you. Yes, the principles are clearly stated out, but also for us to analyze the progress of the state, we have to go back and look at if they are living to the fulfillment of these core principles. And when we put democracy in it, that would be a discussion for another day, because I don't think we would handle speaking about democracy just in about 30 minutes. Yes, it's by the people. And you find that it's these people who feel that their rights are repealed and in turn end up having this issue of mindset. And then also on what Francis spoke about, one thing that is wrong in the eye of someone should be seen as something that is wrong somewhere. That is very fair, and I want to agree with him. One thing is, let us accept what's wrong. Like he said, you do not have to carry members to just take to a by-election. We did not say there was a war somewhere. You do not have to carry that particular place to see that an electoral process goes on. By all these happenings, these are the things that if you come out vividly to speak about, you'll be looked at as a pivot of war, or of I don't know, a threat or something to do with someone who wants to fight. Yes, many a times it's not that maybe the people who come out to speak out about these things want to fight. And just like Francis said, yes, let us accept what is wrong. If something is really being said, it's wrong. Let us accept it the way it is and look towards correcting that one thing which has been said wrong, not trying to repeal someone's voice when they come up with that. And yes, over to you.
Yeah, God. So we are going to close this these conversations. I want God to respond to this. Then we shall have our last, statements, our closing statements. God, in 2 minutes, could you please respond to this?
One thing I must also emphasize in the 2 minutes you've given me is that in Uganda, we have the opposition leaders that have given Uganda a negative publicity. Whenever it is time for elections, even before elections or just immediately after elections, we have always seen the opposition leaders running to the CNN, Al Jazeera, BBC, in the US, in Britain, and they are really speaking fire and they are speaking negative publicity, and people who see them, they actually think that that's what we actually have in Uganda, which is very negative. These people, I look at them as self-seekers rather than people who are looking at the patriotic part. They are not Pan-Africanists. They are not even for, whatever they want is sympathy from the Western world, so that they can have a Western world influence in the politics of Uganda. The politics of Uganda, because of this, let's look at it. Uganda has so much invested in contemporary, we can say contemporary security threat. How can we calm down the contemporary security threat, like terrorism, illegal migration, land conflicts? We are looking at human trafficking. We are looking at environmental degradation, drug abuse, foreign practices and abuses, political violences, cattle rustling, cult practices, armed trafficking. All this, the nation has really sat down to make sure that this contemporary security threat are coveted. So when someone comes and begins giving the negative publicity about the country, he's not patriotic, neither is he Pan-Africanist. So they don't really see the value in us. That's whatever they are looking for is self-seeking. We have seen this the so-called opposition parties, why are they breaking down? We look at the one which was for the leading opposition, which was FDC. We see General Shamuntu choosing Chiza Besigye, that you go outside and you publicize, and when you get money, you don't come and share with us. We are seeing the people in Nup saying, no, 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 to you, Bobby Wine. Whenever all these funds come, you are building your Busabala, you are building your what, you're not building our party. So we are looking at self-seekers and how are they doing it? They are doing it by giving a negative publicity to the nation. And people who hear them, they come up and say, here in Uganda, things are bad, you know, and people keep on believing them. But I strongly believe Uganda is on track and Uganda is doing very well. If we can only emphasize these contemporary security threats that are hindering the socio-economic development, I think Uganda is on the right track, and where we are heading, we have a right future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gad, for those statements. Well, again, this is the thing of perspective. This is about perspective. You all with full force went on the opposition much as we actually weren't so much talking about opposition or not in opposition. We were generally talking about Ugandans, and you specifically went for the opposition. But anyway, also thinking about it, in your situation, what would you do if, let's say, your people who are moving with you on the campaign team, people who are with you throughout the campaigns, people who are members of your party or your group are persecuted? If you have, let's say you're moving with a team of 200 people and you have around 150 in jail, beaten, and some dead, what would you do in your situation? Yeah, just asking in just 30 seconds, what would you do?
Why are they being arrested? Because you're not hearing me even now?
I can hear you now.
Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes.
The question is, before you say 30 people or 100 people being arrested, the question is, why are they arrested? Why are they being prosecuted? It is for the illegal activities. Uganda has invested a lot in security. So we already have security information over their subversive activities they are intending to do. We are investing a lot of resources in security. By the time what they are planning to do, we already know it. And it is part of the country to protect the people and their property.
Thank you very much.
One of the work we should do as a country is to protect our under their submersives. If we know that this is what they are trying to do.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you, God. we are going into our round up session of this conversation. It's interesting to hear what God is saying. In fact, what God has just said, that the country is investing a lot in security to find out what the opposition is planning. In the US, I think like the year 1974, in the 70s, yes, early 70s, around 74, a president of the US was impeached, and he, of course, consequently resigned because he was in power and minding so much about spying on his opponents, and that has been famously called the Watergate scandal. So I think we can do better as a country. I think we are together. We're supposed to be together in this and looking at the other as an enemy. Let us wind this up. I want to begin with you, Francis, and then go to Flavia, and we shall end with Kat. How do we as a country go forward? How do we ensure that there is real sustainable social development how, yeah, to ensure that there is, less hunger, that there is, that there is sanitation, water and sanitation, access to food, ending poverty, generally the SDGs, and also, of course, building institutions. How do we move forward and to attain those?
Thank you, moderator, and the viewers, and my colleagues in the house. One thing we need to embrace is mechanization of agriculture, and then promoting small-scale urban farming, owing to the fact that our backbone is agriculture. 2, we need to embrace the rule of law. I know, for example, the king of Rwenzori has been under detention for 6 years and on remand for 6 years. Nothing is going on, and we say you say we have rule of law. The extent, I'm looking at the extent to which the rule of law is being upheld. We need to empower the youth, skilling the youth, because they are the biggest population. And by the way, in the next 10 or 15 years, we shall have the biggest number of elderly people because these youth are graduating. So we need to empower them now and prepare them for the next coming. And then lastly, from my side, we also need to work to prepare our people for the future, not saying that every time government has to come in, even at individual household level. No. We need to prepare our people by giving them all that is needed. If it is seed capital, let's give them seed capital. If it is myoga, let the myoga is now a song everywhere. I don't see a myoga coming down to the parishes. It's now a song. Let's give it to them. Let's give them all these other opportunities to explore their potential so that when the future comes, they're able to withstand their own future. If they were able to go through COVID, they can still withstand their future if given what to use. I thank you all.
Thank you, moderator, my colleagues and viewers, plus the house at large. Before I summarize, one thing I don't know how the discussion took a twist from social development to opposition, as God calls them here. But then let us, as Ugandans, learn to embrace the ideas of criticism. Let me say positive criticism, because the way God in particular tabled opposition here, these are citizens, and this is what we are talking about. For Uganda to achieve the rule of law, just like Francis tabled it, trust me, we cannot achieve it at the expense of other people, just by the mere fact that they paint other colors different from what you subscribe to doesn't necessarily mean they shouldn't actually have their rights upheld, have the rule of law put up in place. Just because we want to favor a sector of people, let us appreciate the citizens. No matter the colors they paint, they still constitute the total population of this country. And also, in every criticism your opponent tries to front, when you analyze it very well, you end up coming up with 1-2 ideas that would instead build you as a person, because sometimes we do not see our weak points as people, but it's the other people or someone else it's someone else who points it out for us. Just like in business, they say competition is healthy. I mean, how would you know that there's demand for something, or you need to make better your packaging if you do not see your neighbor doing it? So to me, I would want us to embrace the opposition, as God calls them, just the way they are. These are people who just do not subscribe to our ideologies, probably, but let us just embrace them for us to have a peaceful country and discussions. Now, going through to my summation, I would want to say, let alone the issues of rational ignorance. Let us look for information. Let us study. Let us take case studies, because information is power. Just like they say, knowledge is power. And if you cannot beat the ideas of uninformed person, because they would be speaking directly from an informed perspective. Let us learn to uphold information. Let us study, let us get the statistics right. And also, just like Francis said, I would want to say, let us embrace agriculture, just like he clearly put it, that there are certain things you do not have to wait for the for the state or the government to come at your doorstep to improve it in your household. Let us personally, from home and up to the country, to the country at large, let us embrace agriculture. Yes, it's the country's backbone and it contributes vastly to the GDP. So by us embracing agriculture right from the grassroots levels, I think we will be breaking the poverty index, because where I come from, we are at 68%. That is way too high of the poverty index. But these are some of the things that we need to hear. These are the discussions we need to hold for us to come up with some of these probable solutions. So let us embrace the ideas of agriculture and also uphold the rule of law in all its in its wholeness, because we say charity begins at home. And if you do not practice the rule of law just from a very small setting, there is no way you're going to practice it outside or to the outside world. And lastly, just like we all know that this country constitutes about 68% of its total population, composing of the youth. Let us also skill the youth. We need hands-on. It's no longer a question of the degrees, the masters. Somewhere someone said it's almost going to who you know, but besides the who you know perspective, let us learn the skills. Let us empower our youth so that they can empower the nation, because the power of the youth speaks so loudly to the development of a nation, especially Uganda, that has very many young people. And yes, that is what I would want to say. The rule of law, let us embrace agriculture, let us skill our youth, and let us embrace the opposition or people who do not subscribe to our ideologies the way they are. Because where there's positive criticism, it gives us a platform, or it sets for us grounds for growth. Over to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, the issue of the young people should actually be addressed so much as we move forward. For context and analysis, or comparative analysis, the generation of the baby boomers, Mr. Museveni's contemporaries, many of them were, born during that time, between in the world wars and shortly after the world wars. In Europe, there was a big population explosion, of baby boomers and the generation that followed them. There are very, very many youth, and now they constitute the current population, AIDS population in Europe. Europe has a bigger percentage of Europe. The people in Europe are old people. So Uganda is also going to reach at that level where it has a big population of older people. So if there is no preparedness, there are no social measures to ensure that people who are now young transition in with dignity to older age, when their social amenities prepared, when the social welfare, we may have actually a big catastrophe in the future. So it's important to prepare for the population and the different phases of the population growth. Gad, we want to give you the last say on this show as we conclude.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank you for all the panelists, the moderator, the listeners, and whoever is tuned in for listening to us. But I want you to know that Uganda, under the leadership of NRM, which is now the government in power, has put a lot, knowing that the biggest percentage are the youth. We have youth skilling Skilling the youth is everywhere, in every district, in every sub-county. Skilling the youth, the president has been putting it forward as one of the interventions, and everyone knows. Skilling the youth has been the NRM government intervention of the youth. We have had a program of the rural business economy. Government has put in a lot. We have now the parish development model where the government has come in and the government is saying, we are not going to look at development or what we have been having, where someone comes and says, who is the leading farmer in the district. Now we are coming down to see how we help those local farmers at the parish level. That's why it is called the parish development model. We have technological development. We have the government of Uganda is putting forward agricultural modern farming. We are discouraging a lot of land fragmentation. Yes, I agree that our poverty, we must provide our index and increase our GDP. And where I came in, where Flavia did not understand me, I said partly the opposition is playing a big role in putting us where we came from, putting the economy back to detect any criminal things that can stop the development, prevent them, and if they are already on civic activities, that can stand and say, if for example, Uganda has a better future and the young people who are contributing to the big percentage, the country is catering for them. I thank you for everyone who is listening in, and all the moderators, with due respect to all the panelists and the one who is moderating us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your contribution. And just for context, these the views expressed here are the views of GAD. If GAD thinks many members of opposition are criminal elements, those are his views, but are not views of Center for Constitutional Governance nor Civic Space TV. I've reached at the end of the show, and we are going to be assessing Uganda's progress in very many spheres. We've assessed the social development, which will of course continue. We shall also further delve into the rule of law. We shall go into the health, sector of Uganda, which we also did earlier. We assessed the environmental issues on this show. We shall continue to assess Uganda's or examine Uganda's development when it comes to many other aspects. Today, we began with the social development, which is at the core of community members. We shall continue doing that. Maybe my last say here is, as a country, we've come from way too far to go back. We need to progress better. We need to move forward better with everyone. We have to ensure that the social well-being of every Ugandan is guaranteed. We need to ensure that the quality of life of the next generations, at least if we cannot achieve ours, that the next generation should live a better life than we are living. We have to leave a country better than we found it. Thank you very much. I've been your host, Martin Musiime. Thank you very much, and I wish you a great week. Nice time.